Hi, I'm John DeDakis. I'm a mystery novelist. I'm a manuscript editor, a writing coach, and a former editor for CNN's The Situation Room with Wolf Blitzer. You're one-to-one with me, and I'm one-to-one with John Desjarlais. There he is there. John is the author of 7 novels. His newly released novel, The Kill Floor, is just out. And back when God was a boy, John and I were roommates at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. So, John, thank you very much for doing this. It's great to see you again. We don't see each other much, but we saw each other in Nashville about a year ago.
Right.
So, tell us about The Kill Floor. What's that book about? And I hope you'll be able to do a reading of it as well.
Okay. Well, sure. Thanks for having me, John. It's really good to be with you virtually this way. The Kill Floor is the 4th book in a sort of series. It's set in the same universe as my previous 3 mysteries, the fictional Sinisippi County in central Illinois. And it features Detective Sergeant Frank Flash Gordon, who is a minor character in the previous 3 novels. So I figured Frank deserved a story of his own.
Okay. So now, are you going to be able to do a reading?
Yeah. Should I set it up with the blurb on the back or something like that?
Yeah, give us a sense of help us get oriented.
Yeah, okay. When the brash, arrogant CEO of a huge swine operation is found dead in the manure lagoon behind the farrowing barns, no one in this small town in Illinois wants to raise a stink. The environmentalist.
This is why I like your writing.
Well, not the environmentalists who wanted to shut down the smelly operation, not the townspeople who couldn't bear the smell of it. It's soiling their laundry outside, coating their cars with a brown film. The kids can't go outside and play. Not the workers in the slaughterhouse who are getting ready to strike. They're glad to see him go. So, no one is really, not even his adult children who stand to inherit quite a bit with dad gone. So not even the cops want this really solved because they believe that all the evidence points to a dead guy, a slaughterhouse worker who may have been trying to move the strike talks along, and he ended up dead in a fight. So all the clues point to a dead man. They would just rather be done with this, except for Detective Sergeant Gordon, who thinks something smells. And as he begins to pursue the case a little bit, he's got a little time to do it before he's shut down by his mean bosses. He begins to uncover some other secrets in this small town that no one really wants out. And his life, his marriage to an environmental activist, and everything that he cares for may end up on the kill floor.
The Kill Floor. Okay, so is this the very first scene?
I'll do the first scene, sure.
Okay, the kill floor is yours.
The kill floor is yours. Yeah. In case you're wondering, kill floor is the name of the area in the slaughterhouse where the swine meet their end. Bravo 12, do you copy? Crackled the radio. Bravo 12, copy that, Gordon said. He flicked on the cruiser's windshield wiper. Shoot fly, shoot fly, shoot fly. The retreating storm spat a few more drops of rain. 1076, almost there. It wasn't the first time Officer Francis Gordon dealt with a domestic violence call at the Prairie View Trailer Park. With large families packed into sweaty, single-wide mobile homes, as tightly as the swine in the slaughterhouse where the men worked, men who killed all day and drank all night, fights happened. Trouble was, this was during the police department's second shift, late afternoon into night, not the usual 2 or 3 a.m. after the bars close. Dispatcher. 911, reporting calls about a 1032 on the scene. Use caution. Well, that's just great. Gordon harumphed. Man with gun. Always a gun. Can I get backup? He barked. Bravo 15, I'm on it, interrupted Paul Pembroke, a fellow town officer on patrol. Where the devil was he? What's your 20, Paul? Gordon called. Sinisippi Forest Preserve. Just helped a tourist with a flat. The static of a prowling storm cut him off. Good 30 minutes away, even if he hightailed it with the siren keening and the bar flashing, if he wasn't blocked by a tractor or a combine or some loose cows on the way. Any troopers nearby for assist? Or county? Gordon asked the dispatcher, almost pleaded. Checking, deputies, county route. Radio sizzled like fatty meat on a grill. Stand by. Well, I can't stand by, Gordon complained silently. He gunned the Impala. He cranked the AC. There was no way he'd have the windows down in this August heat at this blazing speed, and with farmers spraying the fields with liquefied manure. He figured the swine lagoons must be close to flooding with all the rain. They needed emptying, even if onto saturated ground. He zoomed past acres of low fields where the stunted corn was drowning. The stench, like a backed-up sewer, had clearly put people in a foul mood. Through a gauzy haze that veiled the green sea of corn on either side of Illinois Route 40, watery mirages flickered ahead. The mobile home park sat ahead like shoeboxes in a circle. Gordon wheeled in with a fishtail stop. Wet gravel sprayed behind his blue and white cruiser. A knot of women and a few children were clustered behind a pockmarked pickup. Seeing him, they babbled nervously, waved at him, and stabbed their fingers over the truck toward the Aqua trailer 2 spots away. Okay, so it's got to be that one. He drew a deep breath that pressed his belly against the bullet-resistant vest beneath his fire-retardant shirt. His stubborn bulge pinched between the rigid vest bottom and the top of his utility belt. Why couldn't he lose that last inch? Why did he have to wear a clay vest on such a blistering day? It's got to be stinking hot. He passed his fingers over his brush cut and stepped out. The rush of heat roasted his cheeks, and the sickly smell of airborne fertilizer stung his nose and throat. He repressed an urge to clamp a handkerchief over his mouth and nose. He secured the car with the key remote. No need to have the suspect escape in his vehicle. The radio crackled inside and on his shoulder mic, garbled, probably his backup, or not, he couldn't wait. A couple of hand-wringing women made a stuttering motion to approach him, but after glancing wide-eyed at the trailer, they hesitated and retreated hastily behind the pickup. Hey, Rosie, Maritza, just stay back, okay? Gordon ordered, raising a hand. From experience, previous domestic violence, and visits with the library bookmobile, he knew they spoke English. The Spanish-only workers were usually bunked in barracks close to the plant or in renovated farmhouses by their employers. Stand right there, okay? His eyes darted this way and that behind the polarized aviator sunglasses, assessing the familiar area. Laundry lines, bent awnings, rusty barbecue grills, children's toys and bikes, trash cans, lids askew, rattling window air conditioners, beater cars without hubcaps, a red Ford pickup with a gun rack. Empty. He has a gun, one woman squealed, tearing at her red-dyed hair. In there! Again, the rapid pointing. Gordon rested his palm on his sidearm. Who's he? Who are we talking about? It's Richie! Richard! We call him Richie! Richie Valera! A shouting tirade erupted through the screened windows. How care you, stupid bitch! He's my kid! My kid! You can't stop me! The woman hollered back. A baby wailed. Make him shut up! Oh, great. Richie again. Drug charges, assault, DUI, a bar fight, now this, a custody dispute, domestic battery, reckless endangerment of a child, possible violation of an order of protection. And the guy sounds wired. The shouting continued. What kind of gun? Gordon asked over the clamor. A big one, a woman said. A shotgun, said a teen girl. A fat one, 2 barrels. Has he fired it yet? No, the girl said. He went in first, and we all argued, and then he left, but went to his truck to get his gun, and he went back in. We called 911 again to tell 12 gauge, 2 shots, Gordon told himself. With extra ammo, maybe. His heart pumped faster. I'm probably interrupting a kidnapping. Going to be a hostage situation as soon as he realizes I'm here. Gordon jerked his thumb at the trailer. Anyone else in the house? No, just the 3. When he left that first time, we came outside too. What's his beef? The women looked confused by the question. His problem? What's his problem? It's his baby, the redhead answered. And she's the mother. It's my sister, Crystal. They're not married. He wants it, and she won't let him. That's because he's always pissed, added the teen. High on crank. Meth. There's a big problem with slaughterhouse workers like this. Kept them awake and strong for the brutal work and the long hours. Easy to make in farm country with all the anhydrous ammonia around for fertilizers. Is he high now? Can you tell when he came here? The teen rolled her eyes. He's always high. If it was meth, it would take 4 officers to wrestle him into cuffs. These guys had superhuman energy and couldn't even feel the pain of a taser C2. They ripped out the darts and left. A Mississippi County Sheriff's Deputy Ford Interceptor crunched its way into the stony circle drive. No lights, no siren, thankfully. 2 brown shirts emerged. They coughed and held their noses. "Ooh, smell my derriere," said Otis Anderson, the paunchy partner, waving sausagey fingers in front of his face. "Woo! That there's the smell of money," the younger Tim Creasy agreed, his mirrored aviators gleaming. "What do we got, Flash?" 1016 domestic, custody fight, in there. And at 1032, it's Richie Villar. "Oh, crap, him again," Anderson grumped. "With a double-barrel shotgun. No shots fired. There's one woman and an infant in the place with him. No one else. He hasn't seen me yet." The blast of the shotgun deafened him and threw him to the ground by instinct. An aluminum screen frame arced into the sky, and bits of pink insulation spewed into the parking circle. The woman inside screamed. The baby screeched. "Shut up! Shut up! The next one's for you! If you don't give me my baby now! No, I said, you whore! I'll kill you both!" "Gotta go in," Gordon said. "Flash, for God's sake, get behind the car," Anderson urged. "We'll call the tactical team right now to contain the guy. They'll set up a perimeter." "No way," Gordon fired back. "There's no time. He's going to kill her and the kid. He'll kill you first. We should get a crisis unit negotiator down here right now. It'll take him an hour to get her from Rockford or Moline, whatever office you call. He won't." "I'm going to count to 3. That's all you get. You hear me? Here, 1. "That does it." Gordon scrambled up. "Francis, what the fat?" Anderson rebuked him. "Get down." "I'm not kidding. 2." Gordon dashed to the rickety wood stoop, stretched out his fist, and hammered twice on the flimsy door. Richie, police, let's talk." Gordon twisted aside, dropped, and pressed his chest and cheek to the dirt. The second shotgun blast exploded through the door, splintering it. Gordon brushed bits of debris from his scalp. "Think you're smart, don't you?" Gordon launched himself up, drew his Glock, anchored his left foot, and snap-kicked the splintered door jamb into pieces. He shouldered inside, the gun double-fisted and raised. The stringy Richie glared at him through glowing eyes that looked like coals, hot and hard. Under a white T-shirt with the sleeves rolled up, colorful tattoos writhed as if alive. He held the emptied shotgun firmly in 2 bony hands, and Gordon expected him to swing it like a club now that he was cornered. Gordon's skin goosebumped. The trailer was cold as a meat locker. "Drop the gun, Richie," Gordon commanded, aiming at his heaving chest. "It's not loaded anyway. It's of no use to you now." "Back off, Gordon. This ain't none of your business." Richie's breath steamed in the frigid air. "It is when there's a gun involved. Drop it, Richie." Richie swore twice and tossed the weapon behind him. It landed with a dull thump on the yellow linoleum of the kitchen nook, where the woman, Crystal, pressed her back against a cabinet. She clutched a diapered child to her damp blouse. Crystal had a split lip and a bruised eye. Cut-up pork loin sizzled in a skillet on a hot plate. A half-diced onion sat next to it, with a butcher knife stuck in it. "There! No more gun! Now get out!" Richie's rapid breathing rose and fell to the rhythm of a country ballad on a tinny radio. "When the lights go down and it's near the last round, all the girls get pretty." His nostrils flared and his hands curled and uncurled into fists. He was totally amped, all right, with soaked armpits and hair matted from sweat. Gordon kept the gun trained on Richie's chest. "Keep your hands where I can see him, Richie, okay? Now listen to me, Richie. You listening? Listening real good, huh? We can all walk out of here and figure things out, huh? No one's hurt. Look at me, okay? You're not looking at me. Look at me, Richie. Richie." "Pig," Richie spat. Then he laughed. The teeth, the ones that were left, were urine yellow and cracked. "Ain't that what they call yous? Pigs." At least he wasn't shouting at the top of his lungs. Gordon tilted his head toward the busted-out window. "There's 2 more pigs in the yard, Richie. More pigs coming. Lots of them. Can I be honest with you, huh? They're not as nice as me. They're tactical. You know what that means, huh? Tell me, pig." Richie rasped, hyperventilating, flushed, dehydrated, no doubt. With luck, he'd just pass out. "It's cop talk for special weapons and tactics," Gordon said. "You know, SWAT. That's what they do, huh? They SWAT guys like they were bugs. They're snipers, and they'll shoot first and not ask questions later. They're going to be real mad coming out on such a hot day wearing helmets and all that heavy body armor, huh? So they're going to want business to be over fast." "Let me tell you about pigs," Richie said, his sweat-speckled chest heaving. "At the Diedrich plant, I kill 'em. That's my job. I stick 'em with a knife in the throat, even if the stunner screws up and they ain't knocked out when they're hung up on the line. I kill nearly 300 hogs a day, 1 every 3 minutes, all day, every day. And you know what, pig?" Keep him talking. De-escalate. "You tell me, Richie. It's dirty work, huh?" Richie sneered. "It's a riot. It's hilarious. I think it's funny how they scream, how they dangle by one hoof and kick and spin, and the blood sprays everywhere. There's no time to stun them again, so I just kill them. I don't care about killing. I kind of like it. I'm pretty good at it."
The book is The Kill Floor by John Desjarlais, dramatically read by John Desjarlais, the author. And the book is just out in September of 2022. When I lived with you, you were such a quiet guy.
Watch out for those introverts.
um, Tell us about the creative process and about the you've got quite the ability to do voice acting. So is that one of the things that you have in your quiver of talents?
Well, I was in radio.
Okay.
Yeah. I was. I did college radio too at UW. You may remember WSRM, and there's another one. So
Yeah.
sometimes you have to do a dramatic reading and that sort of thing on radio. So, but I don't have any dramatic training, no theater background. It's just something that I do when I'm writing. I read all my work aloud. And like Charles Dickens, I take on all the parts of all the characters. He would act out all the scenes in front of a mirror. Now, he did a lot of theater. He performed quite a lot in London, so he was accustomed to being on stage and doing lines. But that's what he did with his novels.
Is that something that you've done from the very beginning as a writer, or is that a sort of an acquired taste as you've gone on and gotten better at it?
No, always read my work aloud. Yeah.
And why?
It's respect for the language, to make sure it's I hate the word flowing, but you want to make sure there's no stumbles. Dialogue is not real speech. It's artificial speech. It's speech with a purpose, but it has to sound real. So you can't write dialogue the way we actually talk. You'd have half sentences and stumbles and repetitions and lots of ums and uhs and stuff. So I read it aloud to make sure that it is actually speakable and that it's moving at the pace that I want it to.
How many drafts would you say your novels go through?
Oh, that's really hard to say. There's so many. I mean, it's countless. It's got to be more than 30 or so. Easily.
Really, that many?
Oh gosh, I'm a recursive kind of writer, so I will, write for a while and then kind of go back a little bit and redo a little bit. That kind of gives me a slingshot into the next scene. So it's this kind of recursive looping all the way through.
I see.
And then when I'm done with a first draft, then I can go through it in larger chunks. Even partway through, if I'm halfway through, I'll go through the first half. That catapults me into the second half, that sort of thing. So when you ask how many drafts, I don't write all the way through, then all the way through again, then all the way through again. It's quite piecemeal.
And that's the way you've always done it?
Yeah, pretty much. A novel is built by scenes. It's not built by chapters. It's built by scenes. And so early on, I would have...
What's the difference between a chapter and a scene in your thinking?
Well, a scene is a fully developed unit of action with a beginning, middle, and end, generally from a single point of view, at the end of which a decision must be made or has been made, which catapults you into the next scene. It's a cause and effect kind of chain. So it's a fully dramatized unit of action, generally in a single place, from a single point of view.
But isn't that a chapter too?
No, because you can have a space break and show what happens when the detective leaves the apartment and has already driven in the car to another location. Sometimes writers will have it be a new chapter just as a way to keep pages turning. Because in the physical makeup of the book, you want the reader to keep flipping pages. So there's a certain momentum in that, I think. But I'm still a little more old-fashioned. The chapters will be a lot shorter toward the end to create that effect. I got to find out what happens next. Keep flip faster.
It's psychological, and the shorter the chapter, the faster the pace, right?
Yeah, and so I like to be mindful of the pace and the momentum and the proportion. These are all artistic considerations of the novel as a form.
At what point do you bring in beta readers?
After I have a draft that I consider done,
Okay.
not before. I don't need advice too early.
Because why?
I don't want it. That's
Leave
why.
me alone. Let me write.
I don't want to be unduly influenced in a direction that I really didn't want to go. I'm not writing to really please others. That sounds odd, I think, but I'm really trying to. I'm really trying to honor the story. It's not even trying to please myself. I have pretty high standards, I think, but it's to honor the story. The story is everything. And until the story's over, it's not ready to be shown to anybody.
Do you have a stable of beta readers you go to, or does it revolve, or how do you go about finding your betas? These are just for the uninitiated. A beta reader is someone who will take your story for a test run and then tell you what's not working.
Right. It changes from book to book. I see my first book came out in 1990, so we're talking about 30 years of production. And I've
Jeez,
moved.
you're as old as I am.
Well, yeah. So it's changed quite a bit over the years. I have not been in writing groups where I've submitted work on a regular basis for feedback. I was early on. I didn't find it very helpful at all.
Because
they didn't know where the story is going. They didn't know the characters. And I had to read their stories, and they had to read the other 6 or 7 stories circulating in the group. I didn't feel it was very focused. They just didn't have the horizon. So I trusted them as far as it went, but they tended to make micro corrections instead of larger, larger comments about the story.
you've mentioned the story twice now, at least. What do you mean by the story, and why is that so important?
Well, not to sound too mystical.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
Although, I'm very interested in mystics and medieval contemplatives. I like to say that you don't come up with the story. The story finds you. And
That does sound
it.
mystical. That does sound mystical. How does that work for you?
You just have to be listening. Again, it's a contemplative process where you're just open to new input. People say, "Where do you get your story ideas?" And they come from everywhere, but not all of them are useful or asked to be written. So you just have to pay attention. Henry James says, "Be someone upon whom nothing is lost." So you have to be very observant and notice stuff. And at some point, something will strike you as having real potential. Killfloor. Let's think about that. I had written 3 books, 3 mysteries in that Illinois universe: Bleeder, Viper, and Spectre, and I considered myself done. Not because it was a trilogy. That's a fantasy kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But at the end, a couple of my major characters got married, and as Mark Twain said, at the end, all you get is the Marion and the Burying. So, okay, I'm done with this. What else should I be doing? I turned to short stories, started doing poetry more seriously, and I was still working at Kishwaukee College with a nearly 40-mile commute one way through open Illinois countryside. All that corn, all those pigs.
I think I see a trend here.
Yeah. So, as you're driving in certain seasons, you got the windows down, and the farmers are spraying the fields with liquefied manure, and it's a pretty powerful smell. And farmers will joke and tell you that's the smell of money. And you heard that line in chapter 1 just a few minutes ago. Mm-hmm. And so, okay, that's as far as it goes. But then I would pass a large hog operation that had a manure lagoon behind it. And it had these raised berms. It was like this big artificial lake. It had to be at least an acre, probably more. And it was obscured by trees, but you know what it was. And I started thinking, as mystery writers do, wouldn't that be a cool place to hide a body?
What if?
Because, who would smell it decomposing there? And, who would think to look there?
Mm-hmm.
And who might be the person buried, hidden there?
Mm-hmm.
And who would do such a thing? And why would they do that? It'd have to be someone with access to the lagoon and could get away with it. And, those wheels start to turn. And once you start thinking about a victim and the villain, you only have to figure out the sleuth, and I had that, the detective sergeant from the small town of my previous 3 novels. And I started to think, well, I think Frank deserves a story of his own. This might be it. So those wheels keep continuing to turn. I notice in the news things about swine operations and stuff. What really jumps out is news of concentrated animal feeding operations, or CAFOs, causing real environmental problems in Illinois, Iowa, and North Carolina, where there's immense hog operations. In like tidewater country, low-lying country, not too far from the ocean, where the hurricanes come. And there was one instance where a powerful hurricane came inland quite a ways and wreaked havoc with all these ginormous manure lagoons at these hog operations. The walls breached, millions and millions, tens of millions of gallons of sewage poured into rivers and lakes and water systems and wells, and it was in the news for a while. So I connected the CAFO with the manure lagoon stuff and the body in the lagoon, and so I kind of go from there.
Do you plot these things out, or are you a seat of the pantser, or do you combine both those disciplines?
It's a little bit of both. I was a careful outliner at the beginning of my writing, but I was doing semi-biographical work. I guess you call it fictionalized biography. So the first book is about St. Columba of Iona, the hot-headed Irish monk who went to war over a book. It's true. It was the first copyright dispute in history. They were valuable. And 3,000 men were killed in the Battle of the Book in the year 560. But anyway, we know certain things about that historical figure. There was an early biography written about him by an admirer. There's a lot of legend around these characters, right? But there is an outline. There is a biography. So that formed the outline for that. I did a novel based on St. Patrick. Same thing. We have a lot of biographical information about Patrick of Britain and Ireland. A lot of speculative stuff, lots of legendary things. You decide what's plausible and what's necessary for the drama, and you make up some stuff. And you have a story that's true to historical detail, but plausible, believable where it needs to be. The mysteries were different. Those were more pantsers. My feeling there was, if you're surprised by whodunit, then the reader will be. So there are certain kinds of general outlines for mysteries that mystery writers know. People in Mystery Writers of America and people like that read enough to know, here's basically how a plot goes. The readers of mysteries are very well read. They're very familiar with the genre and the history of it. And they have certain expectations when they pick up a book like this. And so there has developed over the years since, Sherlock Holmes and Agatha Christie and all that, a series of expectations of the rhythm of such an investigation, whether it's a private investigator or a police investigator or an amateur sleuth who just gets involved for whatever reason. So there are outlines that you can follow, but you have to break with them just enough. There are rules that you better obey, or you're going to disappoint and anger mystery fans. Mm-hmm. If it's a puzzle type mystery, a real old-fashioned Agatha Christie type thing, or Dorothy Sayers, whatever, You have to play fair with clues.
What do you mean by that?
You have to provide all the clues necessary so that the reader could tell who done it had he or she been astute enough.
Right.
And you reach the end, and yes, it's Mrs. Peacock in the library with the candlestick.
Right.
How could I have not seen that?
Because you planted the candlestick on page
planted
3.
all the clues all the way through in plain sight.
Mhm.
And only the detective was clever enough to connect all those dots and accuse the right person at the end. The reader wants to be fooled. If the reader guesses who done it before reaching the end, the reader's disappointed.
Right.
So that's hard to do. That's harder to do than most people think.
It
You have
is.
to cast a lot of suspicion on a number of different people. That's very plausible to try to mislead the reader. That's part of the game.
I have a philosophical question. Look, you and I knew each other back in the 70s when it was at the very beginning of our careers. We were still in college. I was just starting my career as a journalist. And I'm not sure, what was your major? Comm arts or?
Communication arts, yeah.
That's right. Okay. So my question is, how did your life, what was the expectation of what your life would be? And how did the reality match up with the expectation? Because life doesn't always turn out the way you expect. So I'm asking, how did your life change, if at all, from what you expected? And is there a takeaway there? Is there a lesson to be learned? Use both sides of the page if necessary.
Yeah. Well, you know, John, that I didn't really major in communication arts. I majored in InterVarsity Christian Fellowship.
This is true.
And so, even though I'd always wanted to write and be a writer, I was writing spy novels in junior high. I watched The Man from U.N.C.L.E. and I Spy, and I read all the James Bond novels, and all that stuff was on TV at the time and in the movie theater. So I wanted to do that. I thought I might be a TV writer. That's why I majored in communication arts.
And I can remember one of your one of the projects you were working on was the sound effects involved in a Star Wars episode. Am I right about that?
Star Trek, the TV
show. Star Trek. That's right.
Yeah.
And it was, it was very meticulous the way you were, deconstructing it and what was going on.
Yeah, I really wanted to be a student of television screenwriting. And
so what happened? So what happened?
Well, the guy who was teaching screenwriting at UW left, and that's okay, because I got more involved with InterVarsity, and then following graduation, InterVarsity's media team, 2100 Productions, asked me to join their team. So I did, and then I stayed with InterVarsity for 17 years.
And InterVarsity is a non-denominational Christian organization, sort of, I guess you would call it evangelical.
You could at the time. Nowadays, it has too much of a political connotation, and that it would seriously mischaracterize the kind of work I was involved in.
Okay. And so some of your early novels also were sort of Christian. I mean, how would you manage the message? I mean, my hunch is you weren't necessarily trying to be preachy. You were trying to be informative. How would you characterize your use of Christianity, the way you used it in your novels?
Oh, well, like Emily Dickinson says, tell all the truth, but tell it slant.
What does that mean?
Well, tell the truth, but come at it from a different direction so that no one is turned off. I mean, look, let's think about how one of the greatest storytellers of all time pulled this off.
That would be Jesus, probably.
Jeshua
right?
of Nazareth tells stories,
go.
and crowds come and fill the theater, which is the seashore. He has to get into a boat so he'd get away from the crowd, and the acoustics were better. But he told these homey stories of commonplace people and occupations, farmers and house stewards and judges and lawyers and so on. These are the kind of people and occupations people knew about. And these are the stories that have lived for a very long time and still strike us deeply. So when you want to get at a very deep human truth the best way is through a story that engages the listener and invites the listener to make meaning from it.
I can use an example of something that I remember that you wrote, and I think it was when you were with 2100. It was basically, how would a reporter of today cover the event where Jesus overturns the money changers, throws them out of the temple, and you did a man on the street kind of interview, and you had one guy say, "It was like the guy who owned the place." Do you remember that? Yeah. And I think that's what you're talking about, looking at, 2,000-year-old events from through a different lens.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is why Jesus told stories, to engage and really respect listeners thereby. I'm telling you something kind of important here. Engage. Think about this. He wouldn't always end a story, too, by the way. Think of what we usually call the prodigal son. It's really a story about two sons. The one who gives his dad the hoo-ha and leaves with his inheritance, squanders it among swine.
Yeah, here we go again.
Yeah.
Author's message.
And then decides, he runs out of money. He has to work with the pigs. Horrible thing for Jews. And he decides to go back home with his tail between his legs, so to speak, and beg to be taken in as a servant. Meanwhile, the other son is loyal and faithful, has stayed at home, done his job, been dutiful. And so when this scoundrel comes back, and the father lavishes attention on him, put a ring on his finger, which is like giving him the family credit card, put a nice robe on him, let's have the fatted calf, let's have a party, let's rejoice. And the older son is super peeved about this. I don't get a party. I've served you all my life. And the father says, you have been with me and faithful always, and I recognize that. But shouldn't we be joyful that your brother who was lost is now found, who was dead is now alive? And the story ends with the question. We don't know what the brother does. Which
makes you, as the reader, ruminate and think about it.
It does. But his particular audience, the religious people of the time, are super peeved because they know that he's really talking about sinners and down and outs and the tax collectors who are in cahoots with the hated Roman government. Jesus is welcoming all these sorts of people into the new family of God, and these religious scholars and religious lawyers and stuff are the older son who's and they're terribly offended by the story. No wonder they killed him.
So
fiction can be dangerous. It'll get you in trouble.
It can. So we're just to bring it back to the original question, and that is how your life is different now from what you expected. You had read a lot of mystery novels, spy thriller type things.
Yeah.
You were a comm arts major. You ended up going into, in a sense, a Christian ministry, but there was a communications arm to it. So you were in that for 17 years, but life goes on. And so did you ever expect that you were A, going to write novels, and B, that you would teach English for so long, 25 years?
Yeah, I did, because the ministry thing was another kind of storytelling. All the documentaries that I did and all the other sorts of film and slideshow kinds of things that I did, they all told stories of interesting, heroic people doing good in the world, by and large. That's what the topic was. Then when I left, I'd started publishing short fiction, and not just in Christian magazines, but in secular ones as well, and some poetry. And I wanted to do that more fully. And I thought the only way I can do that is to have a profession where I would have time to write. And the teaching profession is one of those professions. You really can't do it in journalism. You knew this. It's very demanding work, very time-consuming work, very energy-consuming work. being an editor or a literary agent or anything like that in the publishing world, totally consuming, totally exhausting. Doesn't leave you time to write. But teaching, it's not that you have a lot of time. A lot of people think, oh, you just teach 3 classes and you get the summers off. No, there's a lot of prep, and there's a lot of politics, and there's a lot of committee work. And, it's very energy demanding also. But yeah, I did have summers at my discretion. Sometimes I taught and sometimes not. And I did have 2 sabbaticals over 26 years. And you have to submit a proposal for a sabbatical, do something that is going to be beneficial to the college. And not everybody who applies for the sabbatical gets it. Depends on your proposal. They've only funded like 2 or 3 per year, that kind of thing. But each time I proposed writing a book, because I was teaching creative writing. And I said, you want a creative writing teacher that publishes fiction, don't you? Oh yeah. So they let me have a half-year sabbatical to write Bleeder and time off for another project as well.
Okay.
So that was good. That was not draining.
So how did you approach? I mean, there's deep within you. There's a deep faith within you, which I've known for as long as I've known you, and you're very articulate. You're very thoughtful. You try to integrate your faith with your life. So, as a teacher in a secular organization, and I'm not sure if this was was this government funded? Was
public school? Yeah,
it was public school. So that's tricky. How did you navigate that, or did you just back off and sort of put your faith in your fiction?
Well, you don't back off of who you are.
Okay.
I just think the way you talk and the kinds of decisions you make, the way you carry yourself, embodies your faith. We ourselves are incarnations of the gospel. If that doesn't sound too weird.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're saying is you just be you. It's not like you have to say anything.
Well, it's as Francis of Assisi might say, preach the gospel at all times. If necessary, use words.
Exactly. Okay.
So it's how you live, and people notice a difference. Not that I'm trying to be that way ostentatiously. Anyone does that by blowing their horn on the corner, like Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount, right? If you try to show yourself to be openly pious and religious, that's hypocrisy. That's not real piety.
I don't want to dwell on this, but because of the last 4 or 5 years and the evangelical embrace of Donald Trump, the word Christian means different things now. Yeah. So I would be interested in how you see yourself in relationship to the, those kinds of evangelicals.
Well, the word has become so politicized. I'm not going to use that for myself. Besides, I'm Roman Catholic.
Okay.
And but I'm not one of those hyper conservative abortion. Let's get back to the Latin Mass Catholics either. Mm-hmm. But I'm not on the other hand one of these very liberal progressive Catholics who deny the authority of Scripture and the authenticity of miracles. So once again, I am, as they say, caught between 2 stools. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. I want to be a Jesus follower. That's probably the best word. Christian has just, in the secular press, taken on the sense of a political position, white Christian nationalism, which embraces all kinds of idolatry that embarrasses and angers me. And I certainly don't want to be part of that.
I think you mentioned when you did your book launch that, in a sense, to a certain extent, evangelicalism has been hijacked. I think that was the word you used.
That would be appropriate. But so many have allowed themselves to be so. believing that there's some kind of messianic, apocalyptic storm that's coming that will uproot all evil and bring about a golden era. And this kind of fantasy is leading to all kinds of violence.
Are we at a point where, and maybe you can speak from your own experience, are we at a point where it's impossible to in any way find common ground with some of these people who are, in a sense, embracing a fantasy?
Well, the only common ground is love. So we have to love them, not hate them. They gotta love us.
Even if they hate you and what you stand for.
Turn the other cheek is what my teacher told me.
Yeah. Okay. Fascinating. We could go on and on and on. What's next? What are you working on now? Now that this kill floor is out, I can't believe that this is the end of the line. So what's percolating?
I just finished a young adult novel.
Of course, why not?
I have teenage granddaughters.
Good Lord.
So yeah, so it's for them.
Okay. How far along are you?
I have a finished manuscript. So in it, in a North Carolina cornfield in late September or thereabouts, harvest not that far away, and corn mazes are being carved out for Halloween and all that kind of thing. All the leaf peepers are starting to come out from Charlotte and Raleigh and this kind of thing. But overnight, a mysterious labyrinth appears next to one of these corn mazes. And it's not a labyrinth that's like a maze. It's more like one of these ancient prayer walks where there's one path in and one path out. The same path. It just keeps winding back and forth upon itself. And, in ancient days and in medieval cathedrals, you'll see these a labyrinth like this. You've seen these, right?
I've seen. Oh, they're not just
the
in
one at
medieval,
Chartres Cathedral is the most famous, I guess.
but they're
It's
more.
a form of a walking prayer or even a pilgrimage.
Right.
But the thing with this is that when someone goes in, when they come out, something has changed. An alternative possibility of some sort. And my geeky 8th grader, Cricket St. Clair, whose dad is a science teacher at the middle school, is really curious about this. And she teams up with a very unlikely partner, 14-year-old Ryder Neely, a mountain boy with not very much education at all, whose parents are criminal moonshiners, meth dealers. But they form this unlikely pair to discover the secret of the labyrinth that seems to alter the possibilities of whoever goes in and comes out. But there's one terrible possibility that they might not be able to avert.
Okay. And are you going to be looking for an agent? Do you have an agent? Talk about the publishing process.
Okay, well, that's very frustrating.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that. I searched for an agent for Kill Floor for 2 years. Got no bites, not at all, and decided to go with a small press. But then again, you got to know that you have to approach small presses and that they won't take you automatically. It's got to be good enough quality that fits into their line and their schedule. So I got rejected by a lot of small presses and finally found one in North Carolina. They had a liking for local authors. So sometimes it ends up being like that. So I've been querying agents for almost 2 years for the young adult novel. Some positive feedback, which helps. Oh, what an interesting premise. And, really well written, but it doesn't fit our list at this time. Yeah, okay, whatever. So I'll in the new year, I'll be researching small presses for this as well. You got to take control of your own career that way, because the publishing world has shrunk once again. There's only 4 really large publishers. And even though there's only 4 big, legacy or traditional publishers, there's tons of small ones. And of course, there's an avalanche of material because of self-publishing.
Well, I wanted to ask about that because you haven't really self-published per se, correct?
I did one, the St. Patrick novel. I had no bites for the 20 years that I looked.
Man, oh man!
And you heard that right.
And was self-publishing, I don't know, rewarding, frustrating? You've done both, indie and self-publishing. How would you compare the two experientially from your end?
If you're committed to self-publishing, you have to be committed to being a business on your own. You have to be a real entrepreneur. You have to like the business angle and the promotion and marketing angle. That has to energize you.
Did it you?
Of course not.
Oh, introvert. Got it.
The introvert finds the promotion and marketing kinds of stuff painful.
Right.
And so, but I thought the story was so important, and I thought it was of good enough quality, and an editor I paid said so, that I decided, let me just go ahead and do this. It'll only cost me a fee for the cover design and the internal design. And it cost me for the editor, which I found through the North Carolina Writers Network. They have a critique and editing service for members. So I did that. So that encouraged me to go ahead and self-publish this and move on, because I had it in hand, since 1993 or so.
Yeah.
I made a number of changes in 2020, thanks to the pandemic. I was, had a lot of time on my hands. Mm-hmm. So I thought, how can I really strengthen this and make it ready? So the editor gave me some leads. I knew there was an aspect I really wanted to strengthen. And let's just do this, get it out of the way, because I want to move on to the next mystery, which was also in progress.
Okay, so don't you have to market even if you get traditionally published?
Yes, you do, and you want to be a real partner with your publisher, especially the small houses, which don't have big budgets to promote their writers. So you want to do right by the people you have partnered with. Mm-hmm. So I've been doing everything that is traditionally done by way of promotion and marketing.
Yeah.
I want to play well in the sandbox.
Right.
But I don't really have a big interest in becoming a celebrity and being very noticed. I think there's a terrible spiritual problem of envy and losing your sense of humility and place. And you can just get too carried away with yourself, and you yourself can become a commodity because you become a brand. Everyone talks to you about your brand, and your name is your brand. No, my name is not my brand. My name is not even me. It's what I'm called.
Let me ask you this. I just thought of it now. We were talking about introverts. Was Jesus an introvert? How would we don't really know what his temperament was, but I mean, you've thought about this, I'm sure. What do you think?
Well, he had such balance, an admirable balance, an ability to withdraw at the right time, to seek solitude and silence, and to communicate with his Father. And he had the ability to be one-on-one with people and show genuine care and engage. The leper, the woman at the well, surely come to mind. Mm-hmm. But then again, he loved the crowd. He wasn't an entertainer or a magician on stage or anything like that. he didn't like some of the attention because there were all kinds of misunderstandings about who he was and what he'd come to do. He didn't want that kind of publicity, but he engaged very readily with all kinds of people, and especially the kinds of people that the rest of society looked down on.
Mhm.
People loved to invite him for dinner. He was a great guest. He told cool stories. You know?
Thought-provoking stories. This
Yeah.
is fascinating. Have you ever considered, I don't know, the ordained ministry?
I did at one time and decided it would be too restrictive. I wasn't pastor material. Introverts, maybe some are, but I think you have to be more of an extrovert to go into pastoral work.
Yeah, yeah. It's part of it is the discernment process. You have to know
Yeah,
yourself.
so yeah, I applied to Princeton Theological Seminary and almost went.
Mhm.
I was accepted.
Why didn't you go? Because of this would have been a major change or maybe even a
It
uncomfortable
really
change.
would have. It would have put me on a track to being a Presbyterian pastor. And I really hesitated at that. I thought, well, maybe I can be a New Testament scholar. I'd studied Greek and I knew some Hebrew and I
Jeez.
studied the scriptures for a long time. I knew theology, blah blah.
I flunked
But
French twice.
knowledge puffeth up, as Paul writes, right?
Mhm,
So
mhm.
that gave me pause. I don't know. I think it would have put a real strain on my marriage. 3 years of graduate work that's with an uncertain outcome. And I thought, well, uh, I'm not sure that's really what I want to be doing. And so I did 1 year of graduate work at Columbia University instead, uh, in instructional design and technology.
Mhm.
Because I figured I'll stay in media and I'll stay in storytelling, but with a more educational slant to it.
Mhm.
I can go into public education with this.
Talk about your time as an English teacher. Was that, I don't know, encouraging or discouraging? Were the students really eager to learn, or were they just, punching the clock or punching a time card? How was that? What was that experience like?
It's so varied. I mean, at a community college, the admission policy is y'all come. Open
Right.
enrollment. It's called.
But in some cases, these kids, messed up in high school. They made some poor choices, and now
That's
they're really serious
They're a little
about getting their
older, more
life.
settled, more focused.
Mhm.
But you get the 18 and 19-year-olds also who are bright and attending strategically to lower their costs and transfer seamlessly into a 4-year school, having cleared a lot of their requirements.
Mhm.
You also get a lot of veterans coming back. We had a long war in Asia. You
I've
may have
heard of it.
noticed.
Yeah, yeah.
I had a lot of 20 and 30 somethings coming back, some badly hurt,
Mm.
who were retooling their careers, getting out of the service and trying to figure out what to do with the rest of their lives. So that it was a privilege to be with them. It was in farm country, so you get a lot of rural kids looking to get out of farming and out of the farming business.
Mhm.
But others are planning to stay. So there was a farming program, an ag program, equine science, horses. There was horticulture, gardening, flower shop, golf course management. The community college is so varied. It's vocational school, but it's also the traditional first 2 years of college. You can't offer anything at the junior or senior level, so you can't teach Shakespeare, let's say, or Milton. That's a 300 or 400 level, junior, senior level. But I could do creative writing. Those students were eager, engaged, imaginative. They wanted to be there. It was an elective. They signed up to be there. They really wanted to figure out how to do this. In composition, the story is a little different. Very broad variety of students, but you also get the division between those who, um, but no one really wants to be there. I mean, some do, but the students in high school who hated English and didn't do well said, "Why do I have to be here?"
Mhm.
And the students who were good at English and good at writing in high school would say, "I'm good at this. I don't need to be here."
Mhm. Mm.
although most of those had a better attitude.
Do you have some success stories? Did some students get published?
Yes, from the creative writing classes, yeah, poetry and fiction. There was one guy in particular, he was in his mid-40s, and when he submitted his first work, it was brilliant stuff. It was the kind of stuff you would see in high-quality literary magazines, Southern Review or Black Warrior Review, or this kind of thing. But he didn't understand point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And so once he grabbed that, he took off, and he placed work with Black Warrior Review.
This must have been incredibly fulfilling over those 25 years with the different types of people and their, being able to mold them and encourage them.
You join their stories. That's you're a minor chapter in the story of their life, and you hope that maybe you affect the outcome somehow. But as John Calvin said, you cannot save them all.
So you're technically retired, but how's retirement? I mean, I get the sense though that you're not really retired.
Yeah, I am, because I'm not going to a job every day, and I don't even consider the writing to be a job that I go to every day. I don't get up at 5. I'm in the seat by 6. I put in 3 or 4 good hours, have lunch, and then answer fan mail. You know what I mean? Or do the business aspect in the afternoon when no, I don't keep a regular schedule like that. I am seeking the kind of Benedictine balance and retirement that you would find in a monastic community.
Explain that.
I'm looking to find a balance of prayer, study, work, and leisure or recreation. So that's how the monastic schedule goes. It's a steady rhythm of a quieter life in the presence of God with a balance that seeks to blend truth, goodness, and beauty in an excellent life.
I can't think of any place where we should go from here. I think we should leave it right there. This is how people can get in touch with you. I presume that they can contact you through your website.
There's a contact page there, yes.
Okay, it's johndesjarlais.com. This has been so much fun.
Good to be with you, Jay.
You've turned out pretty well, sir.
Well, aren't you nice?
We've been talking to John Desjarlais. He's a mystery author and my former college roommate. This has been great, John. Thank you.
Thank you very much.